walking through this. We've been working on an outline. You don't care about outlines, but I do, and I'm the one that's preaching. Yay! So we've been working on an outline. And the difficulty with tonight is that this is one little point we didn't get through the last time, so this is tacked onto the end. So I'm not sure if you don't know the flow of the outline, whether you'll get it. But even if you do know the flow of the outline, you may not get it. So I don't know. I'm going to give you the outline anyway. In relationship to the seed. We started out with the idea of the concentration, the sower's focus in relationship to the seed. That was the first idea that we were proposing to you from the passage. And we broke that down into three ideas. One is the focus. Obviously, the focus of the sower is on the seed. The sower himself, he doesn't give his name. He just calls him sower. And the sower, that title, is actually a function that this man is doing. Jesus, in this case, is doing. So he's performing the function of sowing the seed. So obviously, the whole reason for his existence, the whole reason he's in the story, the whole focus on him at all, if there is any, is all wrapped up in that he is sowing a seed. So he wants to do something in your life. So Jesus has come to implant into you truth himself, that something might take place in your life. That's his focus. See, he's not out to get you. He's not out to trap you. He's not out to, well, I'm going to change them. He's not out to, I've got these rules and you... See, that's not what he's out to. He's out to give you truth that something might take place in your life that might be magnificent, and you might become the fulfillment of the dream that he's longed for. That's what he's after. Hey, he's not against you. I think that's important. He's not against you. He's for you. You have never had anybody who is for you like he is. And he has brought the seed because he's for you. The second idea. First of all, there's the concentration, the sower. We're looking at the focus. The focus underneath that is the idea he is a sower, and his whole focus is on getting you the seed, which is going to produce in your life. The second idea under that is freeholder. He owns the seed. See, he has manufactured, he has put together, he has formulated, he is the seed. So this is all about him, folks, all the way through. So when somebody else comes with a seed that they've put together, hey, you can be rest assured it's a tear. So the only valid truth comes from him. Now, third idea underneath concentration, the sower, focus, got that, freeholder, and faith. He has absolutely, I think this is phenomenal, he has absolute faith in the seed. In other words, he doesn't sow the seed plus fertilizer. He doesn't sow the seed plus, it's not plus anything, it's just the seed. That's all he's about. And the seed, of course, is the word of truth, which we're going to discuss. Therefore, he has total, absolute confidence that the seed will do in your life what it needs to do. Now, moving to the second major point. First major point, concentration, the sower's focus. Now we're moving to the second point, which we're going to talk about tonight. Christ, the seed. Well, I thought you said he was the sower. He is. He's the seed too. Woo! Isn't that good news? Oh, it sounds like he's about all there is. You're dead right on that one. So we're back to the fact that Jesus is all in all. He's not only the sower of the seed, he is sowing himself. He is the seed, the reality of his person. Now, we've dealt with two ideas underneath this major category. We have dealt with two ideas. One is the form idea. Jesus is the seed. It takes the form. The seed is in the form of the person of Jesus Christ. So we're not talking about an idea. We're not talking about a concept. We're not talking about, well, if you just learn this. We're not talking about 12 steps. We're not talking about, well, if you would do, we're not talking about a list of rules. We're not talking about, well, if you join that church. We're not talking about if you were baptized like this. We're not talking about any of that stuff. What we're talking about is one single thing, and that is the reality of the person of Jesus. And remember, what we're dealing with is the person. What did I say? The person. The person himself. In other words, we're not dealing with what he says. We're not dealing with his instruction. We're not dealing with what he left behind. We're dealing with that person himself. He himself, the person. He has a mind, he's thinking, he has emotion, he feels, and he has a will, he makes decision. And we've walked through this before. He's not the force, that's Star Wars. He's not Mother Nature. She's out there, leave her out there and leave her alone. So we're not dealing with that. What we're dealing is with a living, functioning, moving person called Jesus. And he's confronting your life. And the issue is your relationship with that person. Well, I don't like the pictures on the wall over there. That's none of your business. We're not dealing with that. We're dealing with the person of Jesus. See, how you feel about, well, you wear your belt on the side. I don't like that. I don't care whether you do or not. We're not dealing with that. We're dealing with the person. The person. Well, your nose is too big. I acknowledge that, but there isn't anything I can do about it. So we're not dealing with that. We're dealing with the person of Jesus. Are you getting this? See, everything comes back to him. So you're not dealing with me. You're not dealing with the church. You're dealing with the person of Jesus. And he is the seed. We dealt with this concept, which is a phenomenal concept, and that is the idea that Jesus, who is the one we're dealing with, and the reason we have to deal with him is because he's the truth about God. See, if you want to know anything about God, you've got to deal with Jesus. Because Jesus is the absolute truth about God. And there's no way to know truth about God without dealing with Jesus, because he is the visible image of the invisible Father. And the only possibility you've got of knowing the truth about God is Jesus. And Jesus came to tell the truth about God. And when we looked at him, we found out what God is all about. And he is the complete, final revelation, spoken revelation of all that God is. So Jesus told the truth about God. But the significant thing is that Jesus told the truth about God because he tells the truth about man. Well, how can he tell the truth about God and the truth about man at the same time? He is the truth about God and he is the truth about man, because man was built by God, created by God to tell the truth about God. So you were built to be a demonstration of the person of God. Well, who does that best? Jesus. So he tells the truth about God, and in telling the truth about God, he fulfills the truth about man and tells you what you're all about. So you will never find out what your life is all about. You will never know the reality of what you are really supposed to be. You will never know destiny, the fulfillment of what's gnawing at you inside, until Jesus comes. And in Jesus, you will be able to tell the truth about God and tell the truth about man, because you will be what he wants you to be. You got to have him, guys. You got to come back to him. Come on. This is the whole deal. The person of Jesus. So Christ is the seed we're dealing with. And the form of that seed is the person of Jesus himself. Now, underneath that, we dealt with the idea of the fall. The form, the fall. See, all the way through, we're not talking, when we say the fall here, we're not talking about Genesis. That's another fall. In the passage, it's interesting that the seed fell. In each one of the soils, it fell. It's the Greek word pito. It's the idea of coming from a high place to a low place, which is a description of Jesus down to the core. He came from the high position of all that he is of God, and we won't spend any time on this, but came from the high position of all that he is of God, emptied himself of that, and fell all the way down to become what you are. He has joined us in our humanity. So the condition of the fall, underneath that, condition of the fall is high place, from a high place to a low place. From the status of all that he had as God to the lowness of all that he became as a man. A completeness. So not only have you got the condition of the fall, you've got the completeness of the fall. It was an absolute, isn't it interesting that he completely came down. He completed, wasn't halfway, wasn't partial, wasn't kind of. He didn't join us in token. He's not a fake. He's not God dressed up in a Halloween suit. He is a total, absolute man who is God. Setting aside every resource he had as God to become helpless like you are. Just let it soak. See, you got to get that. Because that bespeaks the very essence of the conviction of the fall. He loves you. Why would anybody with all the categories and qualities and resource of God set all that aside to become what you are to rescue you? Because he's driven by this passionate, overwhelming love for you. Hey, don't kick that, man. Don't step on that. Because it's life. Life itself. Now, underneath that, there's Christ the seed we're dealing with. We're dealing with the form. He is the seed. We're dealing with the fall. He came all the way down. The seed has come to you. Now we want to deal with the formula, which is the end of this section. The formula. I want to talk to you about that tonight. Again, when you come back to verse 19, he says, and anyone who hears the word of the kingdom. The Greek word there is what you would expect it to be, logos. There is another Greek term for word, rhema. R-H-E-M-A, rhema. This is logos. The difference between the two seems to be the idea that rhema is the subject or the totality. In other words, you'll go out of this service tonight and somebody will say, well, what did the preacher preach on? Oh, the parable of the sower, and he talked about the seed. That's the rhema. Now, if you are extra smart and paid attention, and can give the details of what the preacher said, which is probably unlikely. But if he give the details of what the preacher said, that would be the logos, which is the content, the thought pattern, the rational thought pattern of the subject. That seems to be the difference between the two. So what we're dealing with here is not the subject. We're dealing with the details, that is the content of the subject. The logos has the concept, this is so phenomenal, the logos has the concept of an idea. Do you know there's never been an invention until nobody ever invented anything until something happened in their mind and they got an idea in their head and said, wonder if that will work. And it started with an idea in their head. That idea in the head is called logos. Transport that into God. God had an idea in his head. And it's you. you were his idea. And if you don't want it to be that personal, okay, back off. Man, humanity. He wanted sons. It was an idea in his head. And he took that idea and he brought it into existence. And Adam was created. And it was out of the idea that's in the heart and the mind and the head and the brain and the thought process of God. The idea, the Logos. Man messed it up bad. Would you nod your heads? Real bad. So the idea that God had in his mind about the person of man, which is you, it wasn't his idea. What happened to him wasn't his idea. The destruction wasn't his idea. The fall wasn't his idea. The way they turned out wasn't his idea. Cain murdering Abel wasn't his idea. See, nothing that began to take place in the life of man was his idea. Man became the opposite of his idea. And he said, I can't stand this. So you know what he did? He said, I'm starting over, son. I'm starting over. Only this time I'm not going to make a man. This time I'm going to become the man. And the second member of the Trinity leaped off his throne and took on flesh, set aside all that he had as God, and took on flesh and became the second Adam, which is the idea that God has in his head about you. And Jesus became the first one of a brand new species of humanity. Woo! And God was saying, this is the way I want men to be. This is the way I want humanity to operate. This is the standard. Here is what they are. Here's the idea in my head. And Jesus was the display of their very heart and mind of an almighty God. And he's the Logos, the seed that's planted in your life. Wow. Let's break this down a little bit. Let's start with the communication is Jesus. So if Jesus is the Word, the whole deal is that God is communicating what's in his heart and mind, and he's doing it in the person of Jesus. He's starting all over again through the person of Jesus. Let me give you a second idea. The content, the communication then of what's going on in the mind of God, in the Word, which is the seed, is Jesus. And the content is Jesus. There's a lot of Jesus in this, isn't there? Jesus is the seed, the word of the kingdom. The idea in the heart and mind of God about humanity is Jesus. So it all comes back to what he's trying to get done in your life is Jesus. Everything he wants for you is seen in Jesus. Well, preacher, you stand up there and say, you should live a holy life. What makes you think I ought to do that? I've seen Jesus, and he lived a holy life. You stand up there and say, you should have victory over sin. Where'd you get that idea? I've seen Jesus, and he had victory over sin. Therefore, you should. Because what he is in the mind of God, you are to be. You stand up there and say, you should not hate, you should live in love. What gives you the right to say that? I've seen Jesus. He lived in love and had no hate. And he's the idea about you in the mind of God. Well, you stand up there, preacher, And you say, I should live relaxed and not under stress. I shouldn't be uptight and I shouldn't worry. What gives you the right to say that? I've seen Jesus. He lived relaxed, in confidence with the Father. And he's the idea that God has for you. Because everything he wants for you is in Jesus. You stand up there and say, I should have destiny. I should roll out of bed in the morning and know where I'm going and why I'm going there. I should have meaning and purpose in life. I should have a thumb in my back. Life should make sense for me. How can you say that? I've seen Jesus. He had great purpose, accomplishment, created with reason. And he's the idea that God has in his mind about you. Therefore, that's for you. You stand up there and say, I should conquer. I should be a victor. How can you say that? In the midst of all of my circumstances, I've seen Jesus, who even when they nailed him, whipped the socks off of him with the resurrection. So I know. Because he's the idea. Are you getting this? He's the idea that God has in his mind about you. And all of this is for you. For you. This is what he wants. You stand up there and say, I should be forgiving, regardless of who does what to me. How can you say that? I've seen Jesus. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And he's the idea that God has in his head for your life. This is the way you are to be. I know that because I've seen Jesus. You stand up there and say, I should live victorious. I should conquer all of my circumstances. And circumstances should not get me down. How can you say that, Manley? I've seen Jesus, man. And this is what God intends for you, because Jesus is the idea God has in his head about you. See, this is not far out. This is not off the wall. This is the purpose and determined plan of an almighty God who wants this for your life. And is planting that in your heart, on your soil. So, what's the conclusion? If the communication of what's going on in the mind of God, the seed, is all about Jesus, and if Jesus is literally the communication of that idea, and he's the content of that idea, what's the conclusion of the idea? Well, Jesus is the conclusion. Would you let Jesus land on you and turn him loose in your life and see what he does? Just that simple. Just that simple. The soils. See, the seed fell on hard-hearted Hannah, the pathway. And you know what she said? I'm not changing. I want to be a pathway. And I got my own plans, and I'm going my own way. And I'm not tolerating any change. So the seed set right on top, and the devil came and snatched it away. You can do that. I can't make you change. Church can't make you change. What kind of soil you are is all wrapped up in your own decision and response. And you could go right on and be what you are. Have a happy life. But you don't have to. because the seed has landed on you. And he has dreams and plans. And it's all in Jesus. The seed comes upon shallow, hollow holly. She's about that thin, soil about that thick, then solid rock. We know a lot about that in Tennessee. See, the seed comes, she says, okay, I'm open to Jesus. Yeah. But then she's kind of a little bit, well, maybe. See, the seed never goes to the core of her life. It's just surface stuff. See, she doesn't mind tweaking her lifestyle. She doesn't mind, okay, I won't swear as much. Will that make you happy? But see, it isn't about that. Okay, I won't drink. It's not about that. All right, I won't take drugs. Not about that. See, it's about the seed, the person of Jesus, going to the core of your system and literally producing in you the idea that's in the mind of God for your life. Come on. The seed comes and goes and lands on fickle, freckled Frederick. Poor guy. He says, okay, but you see, the seed is only one thing that's in his life. Because there's all these thorns, the cares of the world, all this stuff, and the seed is. And while the seed comes and he talks about Jesus, the next, oh, did you see the game? Then he's, hey, adjust that TV. And then I'm really thinking about buying that car. And he's got all this stuff, and the seed is only one thing. All he wants the seed to do is solve a problem. And then when the problem is solved, he's off to, see, the seed doesn't become his deal. The seed doesn't become, this is my life. The seed is not all there is. It's just, and it's squeezed out. Oh, then there's the good soil. The available, aggressive Andrew. You know what he does? Whoa. Come on, seed. The idea in the mind of God for him. And he says, do it in my life, however that makes me, and whatever that does to me. And his one deal in his life, the thing that permeates every bit of his system, everything that he does, goes, and thinks, everywhere he is, it's always back to, and it produces the life of Jesus, the idea that God has in his mind for you. I'm telling you, you don't want to miss that. You don't want to come up the last breath you've got and say, oh, what God had in his mind for me never happened. You don't want that. Jesus, what do you have in your mind? The idea in your head, the dream that you've got in your heart, what you see, what you want to see when you look at me, how you want to shape me, what you've dreamed I could be. What is that? And we've already found the answer. It's Jesus. Jesus is what you want me to look like. You want to reproduce the life of Jesus in me. And Lord, I can't pull that off. I'm only a soil. But you could plant who you are in me, and this could take place. So you're not asking me to pull this off. You're not asking me to change. You're not asking me to... All you're asking me to do is be receptive to who you are for my life. No con, no manipulation, no, yeah, but it's only about an inch thick. You never get to the core of my life. No, yeah, Lord, but I've got all of these other things that I'm really interested in and giving my life to, and you just become one among many to solve a couple problems here and there for me. And you never become the single thing of my life. Could I be receptive to you tonight? Heads are bowed. God has a dream, an idea in his mind. You are created special. Fingerprints, DNA, all unique. Because he has an idea in his head about you. Would you be receptive? Would you open your life? Would you yield? Would you let the seed, his life, do in you what he dreamed? Would you clear the slate? Would you put everything else up for grabs? And know the idea that God has in his mind for you, and know that alone. Hey, this is simple. Don't say you don't understand. You don't have to. But why wouldn't you? Moments of acceptance. Moments of response. Moments of openness. Maybe you've been shallow. Maybe you have had too many other things. It's time to be his. Be obedient.